important module that is available in the clean room facility here is the autoclave. Auto is derived from the Greek word which means self, and clave, when we say, it is a Latin word which means key. So it's more like a self-locking device. What is the purpose? Like you can see autoclave that is mentioned here. So what is the purpose of using autoclave in a lab like ours? What this is very much resembling the pressure cooker what is used at home. So what is, if you got a vague idea, when we are talking about a pressure cooker, so this is nothing but a highly pressurized chamber. There is an immense pressure that is created because of the superheated coils which are at the bottom. So the heating causes some amount of water which is poured, and that heating causes the water to evaporate, and a high pressure is created inside the chamber. And why is this high pressure created? And this is mostly for sterilization purpose. So the applications are vast. This is very much resembling the pressure cookers at home. These are tabletop, like the stove type autoclave. There are other autoclaves which are really huge. There are autoclaves which are used in aerospace industries, which are as huge as 10 meters long and then 3 meters wide. So this is a comparatively smaller one for a lab like ours. And the amount of pressure, temperature what is created inside, the temperature goes up to 121 degrees Celsius. And this high temperature and pressure ensures sterilization of the various equipments, the devices what we are using. Let's say, let's consider a few applications. So when it comes to dentistry or any other medical application, so there are a lot of devices, surgical tools which require sterilization in case reuse has to be done. And even before you reuse, you sterilize them, and that is when the autoclave comes into picture. In case of industries like rubber industry, they have used it for vulcanizing rubber. Autoclaves are used in veterinary, they are used in food processing industries, aerospace industries like I mentioned earlier. So the applications are vast. And when we are talking about biomedical research laboratory, here we use this in order to sterilize the small equipments what we have here. So that is when, in case, and also ensure that the device what you use inside can resist the high temperature and pressure. This has been widely adopted for sterilization, mainly because of an advantage, that is, in spite of the high temperature pressure, it does an efficient sterilization without hampering the physical properties of the equipment or the tool, or it could be any other substance what is required, what is kept inside for sterilization. So there are other applications like the laboratory gowns what you use, the gloves, the gowns, and these the other clothing are also used. They are specially designed autoclaves for sterilizing these. The gloves, the other materials what are used in a laboratory, because they are prone to contamination, and how do you sterilize them? Even in that case, autoclaves are used. So in our case, let's see how the autoclave operates. What are the different features that are provided on an autoclave? Like I mentioned, this is working at a very high pressure. Always safety precautions has to be taken even before you operate this, because at high pressure there are chances of the high pressure to cause an enormous thrust on the lid if it is not sealed, and then cause a blast. In order to avoid all of this, let's see how to carefully operate the autoclave. So to begin with, there is a cable which goes across and can be connected to the power cord. So we are using the power in order to heat the coils which are beneath. After the power cable has been connected, the main purpose is to use the heater, and once it is heated, the water is converted into steam. Always ensure the water level is much higher than the level of your heater. Once that is done, you see there are different valves that are present on the top. Here this is a dial which indicates the pressure that is built. And once it is in operation, you could see the amount of pressure, yellow, green and then red, indicated by different colors, and this is more like a precautionary measure which has to be taken care. Ensure there is not much, you don't exceed the amount of pressure that has been provided. So always monitor the pressure gauge which is provided here. Just like the conventional cooker, so this is the valve here in order to release the pressure. This vent here or the whistle releases the pressure, and then the valve which is provided here is more a safety valve. And here is the vacuum breaker. All of these are robust and tightly fixed onto the lid. So what happens in case there is pressure which is very high that is built in? So what happens is the safety valve, in order to release the additional pressure, there is a destructive rubber which could be inside, which gets destroyed and then safely removes the pressure. So these are the different screws, the different nuts and the valves which are available on the top of the lid. Now let's see what goes inside, and then there is also a display unit attached to the cooker here in order, like we see, the degree Celsius in order to set the required temperature and the time. So this is the controller for the entire autoclave setup what we have there. The options to start, reset and also set the temperature and the desired time. Now that we've seen the several parts which are there on the lid in order to ensure safety, it also always depends on how tight or loose your screws are fixed. So you always ensure you follow the safety precautions and ensure the screws are fit tightly. Now that we've seen what is there on the lid, let's see what goes inside the autoclave. Another important thing to notice here is the valve. This is to remove air. So once you start, there is a mechanism. So when the steam gets generated, you don't want the air to be filled inside the chamber. The amount of heat the steam could transfer is much higher in a less time than the air which is present. So in order to remove the air, there is a valve which is provided here to remove the air in case it is there inside the chamber, inside the autoclave. So make sure the air exhaust is kept open and you let out all the air, and once the air is discharged, the exhaust is then this could be closed, and then you could allow it to create pressure, build pressure inside. Now if I open the lid here, so the lid has this gasket, so it's really heavy. Just to ensure it tightly seals, a proper seal is created between the lid and the chamber beneath. So you don't want any escaping of the pressure or any leakage. Now that we've seen how the gasket serves the purpose, let's see the inside of the autoclave. Now there is a handle that is provided here in order to lift the entire casing here. And if you can see inside, there is a stand like structure on which the tripod like structure. This is the tripod structure on which your casing sits, and then the structure which goes inside is the heater. So always ensure your water level is much higher and above the heater, so that you avoid any cause of to avoid any kind of burning. Now that we've seen the water level and the tripod, the container sits above the tripod and the heat gets transferred. That is, the water gets evaporated and a pressure is built. So the container has to ensure safety. So there are these 5 locks which are provided, and then you could see the perforations on this, so that the steam could, and the steam which is at high pressure and temperature could penetrate and effectively sterilize the entire system, or the tool sets which are placed inside. So here we have a few devices that are placed inside. Here we have a microfabricated chip which is under study inside the autoclave. Now that we've seen how different tools could be placed inside the equipment, a container like this, ensure you do the proper locking of the system. Now that this is locked, I carefully place it on the tripod and then place the lid. So this is the entire setup of the autoclave. So this entire setup of the autoclave, which has high pressures, which is running at very high pressures and temperature, ensures repeatability in process and most widely used in order to sterilize, because like I mentioned, they do not cause a physical damage onto the equipments what are placed inside. This another important application is when a medical waste, which is a biohazard, has to be discarded, they are processed. The pre-processing step involves using of an autoclave where you sterilize them. The biohazard hazardous material is put inside the autoclave in order to remove any kind of contamination that could be hazardous. So in case of medical equipments, in case of aerospace, in case of biomedical research, you've seen the vast applications of autoclave, the importance of it for sterilizing different chemicals and different purposes. So this was the brief study about how an autoclave can be operated and its uses. So this is more like a steam digester which could digest and sterilize different materials, and you want a clean form of the tools what you would be reusing. So that was all about the autoclave. Thank you.